4 years.
I don't really like this guy.
So while we're getting everything straightened out, for those of you who are new to the class, which is probably all of you, my name is Mike Moran. I'm a lobbyist. This is my 34th legislative session. Yes, I'm almost 55. I started when I was 20. I started as a legislative staffer and moved on to some state agency work and have been a lobbyist predominantly with Indian tribes and nonprofits for the last 20 years. This is my second year with Mr. Dawson. Last year we actually ran 2 bills involving state subsidy for AP and SAT testing. That legislation, if you guys choose to run again, is certainly feasible. There are a variety of other things that are happening with AP statewide testing administration and other higher education materials. This is, as I do this each year, I do it, I adapt from the previous years, and I think I'll take a moment or two to describe what a lobbyist does. Lobbyists work for you. Something to remember, if you had the time and the bandwidth available, you could do my job. If you guys could take enough time off school or were independent study, you could come down to Olympia and you could lobby a bill. Companies, employers, labor unions, all of whom have staff that can do this, often hire contract lobbyists to do that specific function. In essence, it's the same thing that happens at the school when non-employee IT people come to work on the school's computer systems. You hire a specialist to do a specific job. Lobbyists are a type of specialist. Where do lobbyists come from? Well, when a mommy lobbyist and a daddy lobbyist fall in love and get married. But basically, lobbyists come from 3 different tracks. The first track and the predominant track are people like me who worked for the state legislature and want to continue to work in it outside of working for elected officials. And within that group is also what are called legislative liaisons. The legislative liaison is actually the lobbyist for a government agency. And they are in the business of trying to get the legislature to do things for that agency. Most of the time, trying to get the legislature to do no harm to an agency, either through reduction of funding or curtailing its administrative roles. The second group are practitioner groups people. That is to say, people who do something for a living who become lobbyists for a trade organization. 2 good examples are police and firefighters. Generally speaking, the firefighters hire lobbyists who were firefighters or will return to an active fire department upon their time working for the union. The WEA is the same way. Trade associations and business groups are the third and final. And many times what happens is that somebody just kind of decides to get involved in lobbying for business issues, and then they become part of the trade association's government relations team. The Washington Retail Association, the Restaurant Association often hire people who come from the industry or come into the business and want to work in that capacity. Lobbyists overall are fairly well compensated. Generally speaking, a contract lobbyist will make in the neighborhood of $100,000 a year. However, they're self-employed, so 32% of that is tax. So when you get into my line of work, you literally have to decide how much work are you willing to take on and how much money do you want to give to the IRS, because you're paying for not just your health insurance, but you're paying for your income taxes, employer and employee, and also Social Security and Medicaid. So about 31% of my income goes to the federal government. So if I make $100,000, that means I make $67,000 to $70,000, depending on how the year goes. Meanwhile, if you want to work in government relations and lobbying for King County or the city of Seattle, you will easily make 6 figures as an employee, and you will have state and or government benefits and health insurance and pension. So that's kind of those are the most common questions I get, is how do you get into this and how much are you paid? And then the second big thing I'll talk about is what do I do for you? What's my responsibility? Well, in this academic scenario, you've hired me. I work for you. So one of the toughest things to do, especially for the student drill, is that you have to fairly quickly decide, what am I doing for you? What exactly is the project we are working on? And the really cool thing about that is that you are not limited by topic, okay? The limitations that Mr. Dawson and I may put, the box that we may construct is mostly designed to give you something useful to do for these next weeks, okay? So it isn't a pointless staring at me on a TV screen talking about what happened in Olympia, that there's actually something we're working on. So sometimes I do suggest that you, one, find a bill that you would like to submit as a change in policy. Last year, it was getting the state to help pay for AP tests and SAT tests, since for many of you, AP courses are a part of your graduation requirements. And the AP exam is what? It's the pass-fail part of the exam, right? You know, you're not going to take an AP chemistry test from Mr. Moran and then take the AP exam. You know, you're going to take the AP exam. So figuring out the state's responsibility on what's to be tested is really important. Now, there's also the possibility that you want to talk about bees and protecting pollinators, or that you want to talk about drones being flown over orcas in Puget Sound, or oil trains. There are a variety of things that you can pick up outside of the high school, K through 12, higher education universe of policy bills that you would like to suggest. So that kind of that first step is figuring out what, as the client, and all of you in the class are the client, what does this association of individuals wish to pursue? The second step is deciding whether or not we'll be introducing a bill or doing something more general, like monitoring the state's budget, funding a particular provision. That's kind of one of those things. I'm going to show you an example of something I'm working on as a volunteer. I serve on the alumni board of Eastern Washington University in Cheney. And so what we're working on, I don't know how close to the camera I can get this so they can see it. There will be a refocusing for a moment. This is their Interdisciplinary Science Center. And so this is the handout from the university that I give to legislators. And what it does, and I'll show page 2, what it does, it is basically the classic 2-page summary of what they want out of the state's capital budget. And that is something I'm doing as a volunteer for them. For my paying clients, in this case, I work for the Colville Tribe, and for King County Assessor John Wilson, I have some specific projects I'm working on relating to the operating budget and also to policy questions on how the assessor can use technology, such as drones, for ascertaining the value of property. And also, the assessor's office is involved in affordable housing and homelessness, as with a lot of other agencies. The King County assessor does assess the value of property, but a big thing the assessor does is the assessor is in charge of all the property inventory in the county of Seattle, and that's some 1.4 million parcels of land that they have, whether it's a home, whether it's a school, a government building, a church, Costco, whatever it is. There's a tax issue regarding property tax. And also the assessor's office calculates what the levy system, all the property tax levies, whether it's education, police, fire, homelessness, sound transit. The assessor is the one that figures out how those various tax proposals will work out and move forward. And for the appropriations on natural resources and wildfire, as well as other issues of interest to an Indian tribe. So that's kind of my big couple of pieces of things I'm working on, and then you guys are going to be a piece of my work in terms of what we decide to do today. You can swap back out to the dual screen if you want to, sir. So after that little bit, any preliminary questions?
All right, so oh, that's weird. Well, we kind of got your opinions already on Trump. So we are looking at 3 bills currently. I don't believe you've heard of one of them that we came up with this year about inciting composting into public schools for the state of Washington.
I've heard about that as a proposal on the news, but do you have a bill number on that one? Or is that your proposal?
It's our own bill that we created.
Okay. All right. And if you guys choose to run that one, then I'll explain to you what happens next. What's number 2?
We edited the bills from last year's slightly. So we still have the SAT and the ACT kind of voucher. And what was the last one?
So the voucher bill stayed the same, the $500.
Okay.
And then we took the SAT, ACT bill where last year we said that it was going to be once your junior and your senior year. So basically the state would pay for 2 tests. And we edited that state would pay for 1 test.
Okay.
You would choose either junior or senior year to take either the SAT or ACT.
Interesting. I like that approach. I think paying for the tests is a stressor for the student anyway. If you know that you can take this and risk-free, even if you perform at a level that disappoints you, there's actually positive motivation for you to take the second test.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you spent X number of dollars, even and your parents say, well, obviously, the worst thing in the world is when any adult says, well, obviously you can't do this, you failed at it. It's like, no, you don't understand. You can take the SAT a couple of times and improve each time. It's really a function of you getting A, comfortable with the test format, and B, training yourselves on how to and the strategy of answering the questions, understanding the educational underpinnings of how they structured a test that way, or another way, why they ask the questions the way they ask them. Okay, and the third
was the composting bill.
So we have composting, we have the SAT. So SAT, ACT, and AP are two bills.
Correct.
Okay. All righty. All right. Well, we have last year's bills that we can literally have the code reviser re-edit and submit quickly. The composting bill would require us to get some writing done and get a draft out to you right away. And then also I'll talk about the next steps. After you select one of these, we go to the code reviser to get language drafted. And also I have to identify a sponsor. Now for the composting bill, I have a choice between the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee in the House or the Education Committee, and the same in the Senate. I have a Senate Ag Committee, and I also have a Senate Education Committee. And if you choose a composting bill, one of the things I will do, I'll be doing all 3 of these at the same time looking for sponsors, but who actually sponsors these bills may be influenced by the subject matter. So I may go to the Ag Committee and say, well, what do you think about composting in schools? And they'll say, yeah, we want to talk about composting, or the House Environment Committee as well. Or they want to say, let's just run this through the Ed Committee. And so I can always come back to you with a pathway once you selected a topic area.
All right.
So we have already, because we've been sending emails out to legislators, and we got one response back from a representative that said they are not interested, but gave us a name, Strom Peterson. Representative Strom Peterson of the 21st District, okay. I believe. And he said that he is interested in possibly sponsoring the bill. So that would be someone that maybe to reach out to.
On the composting bill?
Composting bill, yes.
Okay.
I emailed both Senator Cutterer and Representative McBride, the 2 bills that we did last year, since they were the ones that we met with us in Olympia and I talked to personally. And I haven't heard any response from them. So I don't know where we would go with those 2 from here.
Well, that's why we'll do what we did last year. I'll start knocking on doors and get somebody.
Okay, perfect.
I mean, the trick is to get something that gets a hearing and has a shot at moving through the process. I mean, last year's experience was very frustrating. We had a bill hearing last year, but it was after the dates of cutoff, so that the bill could not move out of committee even if they liked it. And this year, let's try to run a bill that actually has a shot of getting out of committee and getting into the Rules Committee and possibly to the House or Senate floor. So I would think composting has a higher percentage than educational funding testing. Although I have to admit, getting a voucher system in place for school testing is something I personally feel very strongly about, because in my other life, I'm an instructor from St. Martin University. I teach mostly on Joint Base Lewis McChord, but I also teach on the main campus. So I understand the plight of college freshmen and what they're facing when they transition out of high school into university. It's a change, especially in the military side when we got folks who are enlisted who are also trying to go through community college with the Army and Air Force to advance themselves. I mean, that's a lot to put on a 19-year-old. It really is.
So, yeah, so I can send you the 3 drafts of the bills. Like basically, we just took the same language from our 2 bills last year. House Bill, what was it, 4023 and 4024.
Yeah.
And we just kind of made revisions on there. And then we just kind of used the same template to do a draft a composting bill. But if there's other things that you'd want to put in or language that should be changed, that would be great to know.
I will look into that.
So I will email you copies of those 3 bills.
Perfect.
One question we had was, what or how do you feel that will allow our composting bill to succeed? What will make it have a better chance?
Well, you have this elementary school in Seattle that's been looking at this. And what they're discovering is 1/3 of the garbage is compostable. And you also have a lot of schools are toying with gardens and other things to produce food for food banks, and let alone fresh produce for school consumption. So it's a particularly it's kind of a hot topic. It's something people want to do. People want to do things for the environment at a local level. I mean, we have a giant raft of garbage out in the North Central Pacific that's about the size of the state of Oregon. I mean, literally, it is several hundred miles across. But getting your arms around the technology to collect this, there's actually a couple of college kids in California that created solar-powered basically the same type of boom technology that's used for oil spills. And the theory is that these solar-powered propeller-driven booms will very gradually net and push the garbage. There's netting, and there's a floating boom, so the water flows through, and the idea is that you can take chunks of the garbage raft and make them so that somebody can collect them from a ship. That's really cool stuff. But even so, that's pretty esoteric. But what I have found in my line of work, if we sit down and we say, we can compost our own garbage here at Lake Washington High School and see immediate results, is something a state legislator could embrace and a school district can embrace. So the composting bill is one of those where people can immediately understand and appreciate what you're doing, and it's not costing the state a bunch of money to test a bunch of kids. I mean, last year's class, it was interesting. One of the state representatives pushed all of you, saying, well, you guys are from a wealthy school district, why should we be helping you? It's like, that's not the point. But I will certainly talk to have you ranked these? Is composting now number 1?
Yes, composting is number 1.
Okay, so you want me to start there, correct?
Yes.
All right, sold. All right, I will work only on the composting bill.
Aside from these positives of the compost, are there any potential negatives that you see that are obvious?
Yeah, not so much you guys, but the district school administrators and janitors and others, you're making them do extra stuff. And as Mr. Dawson might tell you off the record, bureaucracies have an annoying habit not wanting to do extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Ask, if you don't trust me, come up with some cool idea and ask your principal and see what happens.
So do you think, is there a difference between like a school doing composting and then having a company come pick up that compost versus a school composting itself on site, like having its own compost pile or something like that?
I'm sure there's a lot of differences, and I'm sure there's probably statute on how composting is supposed to be done, and that's something I'll have to go look up and get back to you on. Okay. And I mean, I actually know the people who do refuse recycling stuff, garbage company representatives and others that lobby. And then also I know people with school administrators, and I can ask those questions.
Okay, perfect. By the way, why don't you 3 introduce yourself so he knows who he's talking to?
Right. Well, I'm Brendan.
Okay.
I'm Jillian.
I'm Valerie.
Nice to meet you.
I'm just writing names down.
Oh.
So I have them because often you three might be the guys who, unless you rotate around and people take turns, sometimes one or three of you will be up frequently at the mic. Brendan, Julian, and Valerie.
I believe we are going to rotate around, right?
Well, it depends. If no one else wants to do it.
Okay.
then you can as well.
I'm
Possibly.
happy to do it.
We're
So
at
who,
10:50.
Yeah, so we have a couple minutes.
okay.
Okay, go ahead, Julian,
So- I'm Valerie.
Valerie,
Yeah.
and you are.
So who do you think would be the best person to go about getting our bill sponsored?
Depend on the composting bill. I have to ask a couple of people. Obviously, we'll talk to Seth and see where he is on this, and then we'll also circle back to the first district and the first district. And let me see you guys are the first and what's your adjoining district? 21st.
Well, no, so we're the 48th district.
On the 48th. So 48th and 1st are the two districts for Lake Washington. So
40,
there's those 6 people.
No. Wait, what, the 45th?
No, the 45th closer to Seattle.
Okay. What's the one right? 40. What about the 41st?
41st is Mercer Island.
That's Bellevue, Mercer Island. So
No, you guys are 48 because Curter
Yeah.
was brought in to replace Habib when he went to the Senate.
yes.
Habib's now your lieutenant governor.
So he did. Okay. So we're the 48, and then there's the one right above us, which
So first district, Luis Masoko, who sponsored your bills last year.
yeah.
Luis is no longer in the legislature.
Yeah. Found that out when we tried to email him again. So
Yeah, the Guy Palumbo is the state senator now for the first.
we have emailed him. So like I said, we pretty much we had students email just on the composting bill, the 41st, the 48th, the 1st, the 5th, and pretty much all the kind of the Western Washington
Okay.
areas, just to kind of do the shotgun approach to see if any of them would be interested. And I know Senator McBride had a phone call with one of my students to say she was like at her limit. She couldn't sponsor anymore, or Representative McBride, but she had a name or two. And then we had, I think, was it Springer, Anna, that you emailed originally?
No, I didn't. I only emailed, Stanford.
Stanford. We emailed Stanford, and he told us the name of Strom Peterson, who would be interested as well. So.
All right. I'll follow up with your guys' work and see what happened, okay?
Okay, excellent. And then next period, we have the student who had the phone call, so she might have another name or two for you
Okay.
that she got from Representative McBride.
Alrighty then.
So we're at the end of this class, so I guess we'll just take like a couple minute, 5-minute break or whatever while the new class comes in. And then we'll continue with my next period for a few minutes.
No, correction. We'll send you a new link on this end, Michael.
Okay, so we'll hang up and then just start again.
Now, guys, if Mr. Dawson hasn't given you my email, it is as follows: Moran Public Affairs, all one word, lowercase, @gmail.com.
Excellent.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'll see you in a couple minutes.